So let's
clouds. I'm not sure they are fully trusting the radar.
And our front two have been sat on that grid for a while.
Hairpin, not locking up your brakes and not running into others.
moving up. Lewis Hamilton fourth, Lindblad up to fifth, Lawson
You go Red Bull in the pit lane, I think. Isaac.
to the end, they don't need to do a further pit stop. So small
And a really clumsy little final chicane and a short run. When we were talking about the line, we meant that line there, the capital L, the start and finish line. That's the reference point, because you'll see lots of lines across the track here and there for DR.
Inside the Ferrari, braking in. So they come. Max Verstappen takes second place from Charles Leclerc.
Let's see if he's been eating his sweeties all at the same time up there, and if he's got any power in. Once they've gone down the hill and through the middle sector, which is about 47, 48 seconds in race trim. But in all of that, Lando Norris moves up to P9 already.
Yep. Side Oscar Piastri, who dares to brake latest, they touched, and there's a little bit of damage, I think, came off the Ferrari. Piastri has lost out. Hamilton's now all over his rear.
I don't think it's one I would have made, but then I don't have all the other pieces of information that they have. I think Charles Leclerc is probably in greater danger of a penalty than Lewis Hamilton, but let's see how that plays out. I tell you what, they're keeping Max Verstappen honest, aren't they?
They certainly are. Max Verstappen, 1.5 seconds behind Kimi Antonelli. I just recall an incident, I think it was first turn in Barcelona a few seasons ago, where the stewards gave a penalty for a very similar instance. Which is why I just referenced it a little earlier on. They have all the access to the historical data, and they can pull up replays as well in the stewards' room, and they decided on this occasion it's a 5-second penalty for Hamilton, so we'll serve that when he comes in for his pit stop. But when is that pit stop going to be? We're up to lap 10 now, and if Ferrari feel that Hamilton
Absolutely beautifully.
Before this race started, he had led Kimi Antonelli 264 laps out of 559 in Grand Prix in 2026, about 47% of all the racing laps, and he's led 10 of the race here so far as well. A 9th consecutive Grand Prix that he's been out in the lead. Behind him, Max Verstappen under pressure a little bit now. Is he starting to struggle on tyres, I wonder? The Ferraris are getting closer to Piastri. We have damage, he's been told, to the right-hand side of his floor. So confirmation there that Piastri's losing a bit of time.
Norris did not make it past Lindblad. Have you ahead of him. Not out of the question that Lando could get a podium today.
Right, 2 Ferraris, Lewis Hamilton right on the white line there and just given enough space by his teammate Charles Leclerc. He's trying to get alongside. Ferrari-powered engines match other, and Leclerc has that one covered for the time being. Norris has got Lindblad into the chicane. Gasly has got his teammate Colapinto, and Nico Hulkenberg has got Alex Albon along that Kemmel straight. 3 overtakes for the price of 1.
The rule says you must leave a car's width, which is what Charles did there to his teammate.
In the media pen to Craig Slater.
Well, George, awful disappointment for
then as Arvid Lindblad pits, and Charles Leclerc trying to get on terms with Max Verstappen. The gap was about 9/10 of a second at the end of lap 16. Here is Arvid Lindblad, who was running in the top 6, and will come back out onto the racetrack roundabouts where Pierre Gasly is just ahead in 12th place. His teammate Liam Lawson has also been into the pits too.
Haven't heard anything, have we, transmitted? But I wonder if they've told Lewis that he's got a 5-second penalty yet.
Your tyres are looking good, Kimmy. Better than others, so you can afford.
Up the pace then, young man. Should you wish, I think, is the suggestion there from Bono. They didn't tell Lewis until he came in for his penalty at Silverstone, did they?
That's right, yeah. Bono's really got to get like a new hammer time, hasn't he? for Kimi Antonelli. Because basically he's like, don't bring me a load of grip back to the pits with discarded tyres. Use the grip, build yourself a bit of a lead, and you're looking good.
Just watching as Pierre Gasly is at the moment, quite the squabble going on between Lindblad and Lawson, getting very close to each other. Good on board there with Gasly. If you want to ride on board, you can do so. We've got them all for you. Sky Sports, log in your Sky Sports app. That's what you need. Now, here comes Max Verstappen into the pits from second. Corinne Chandok's down in the pit lane.
I am, and Crofty. Ferrari came running out as well to try, and maybe it was a bit of a dummy they were trying to play there. Ferrari came running out of the pit lane at the same time as Max Verstappen was in, and they've now gone back. So perhaps there was a bit of strategic call being made to box opposite Max for Charles Leclerc, and he stayed out in free air for an extra lap. But a good stop there for Red Bull.
Yeah, the problem for Ferrari is a big undercut. Brand new set of tyres will gain you a couple of seconds here on the next lap. If Ferrari don't react quite quickly, they'll have Hadjar to pass.
As Hadjar now running in 7th, right behind his teammate.
Yeah. They'll have Isaac Hadjar to get through, to get to Max Verstappen.
Right now, Lando Norris behind Oscar Piastri. He didn't let him through there. I don't think he's got much to defend with there. So whether it was orchestrated or not, Lando Norris is now through. So much pace, you're going to get past him anyway. Oscar will know not to defend too much and ruin him, maybe his own race. So Leclerc is the leader from this man, Lewis Hamilton. The two Ferraris haven't pitted.
And we are opening the gap to Piastri, and we need to serve a 5-second penalty. That's what.
Honestly, then, I don't think he knew before then. Neither of the McLarens have pitted. Your net race leader is Kimi Antonelli. from Max Verstappen. That was the 1 and 2 before they pitted, and Verstappen has just set a new fastest lap of the race and maybe enjoying the hard tyres. That scrap between Limbaugh and Lawson that I mentioned we were seeing when riding on board with Pierre Gasly, that's been noted by the stewards.
Piastri's ahead of Norris now. He's breezed past him up the back straight.
There you go.
Piastri now back in, so we weren't watching any choreography.
No.
It's probably why it looked a bit lumpy. They were blocking. They were fighting for position.
Well, that doesn't make much sense to me, I must admit, but this is going to be interesting. Virtual safety car. Bernie Collins, we didn't see people take advantage last time. Marshall's on the track once again. Will anyone take advantage this time?
Yeah, I think if the safety car is still out, or the virtual safety car is still out by the time Ferrari get to the pit entry, then they should at least do it with Leclerc. This is their best chance to come out ahead of Kimi Antonelli. But I think, in credit to the FIA, they're throwing these virtual safety cars at points where it's not affecting the leaders of the race, so they'll try and clear it, but we've not got a cleared message yet.
So what do you do if you're Ferrari? You shout box box to Charles Leclerc, because
100%.
yeah, and you shout box box to Lewis Hamilton, because the virtual safety car is still out, and Ferrari are coming in. Karun Chandok.
Absolutely. Bright sunshine now in the pit lane. The Ferrari mechanics running straight out in front of me. I see Leclerc pulling up right here. Wheels going on. The other Ferrari's in as well, so they're going to double stack. Yeah, Hamilton is going to have to wait. They have to wait. Don't touch. And I'll tell you what, it feels like an eternity, Crofty, for these mechanics. There they go. You can hear the wheel guns. Piastri has jumped out. And there's a problem there on the front right. One of the mechanics nearly got run over. Wow, that was close for Lewis Hamilton, but the mechanic is standing out, so he's okay. Very, very unfortunate there for Hamilton. He's dropped behind Piastri now as well with that penalty.
Thanks ever so much. The VSC is now ending. Ferrari have had that cheaper pit stop. So Lewis Hamilton, even with the 5-second penalty, has still gained time on his pit stops by about 3.5 seconds. Lando Norris is your race leader. He hasn't pitted yet. Oscar Piastri did come in. That's why he's now down to 5th. Charles Leclerc from Kimi Antonelli. So Antonelli would have expected at the end of all the pit stops that he'd be out in front again as the race leader. He now finds himself currently 3rd on the track and still ahead of Max Verstappen. Hamilton now down in 6th. Isaac Hadjar 7th. He hasn't got to go to the end of this race, but that virtual safety car has counted against him just a little touch. Karun mentioned this. Ooh.
Is he okay?
These are okay, all okay.
Well, Lewis would have had the green light. That's why he went, and luckily it seems no injury to the mechanic. I do hope he is okay.
Yeah, it looked like the mechanic was just leaning back in to do something, didn't it? But Lewis reacting to the green light, it's all you can do. You can't see anything else sitting in the cockpit. You just focus on that light, and you don't have a little check around before you go.
So there's your race leader, Lando Norris, who might not have expected that when he set off from P13. Trying to finish on the podium from outside the top 10 on the grid for the first time in his Formula One career. The man who finished 2nd here last year at Spa-Francorchamps, ahead of former Belgian Grand Prix winner and winner last time out, Charles Leclerc, ahead of championship leader and the man who probably thought he was on his way to a victory at Silverstone until he had mechanical damage, Kimi Antonelli.
Yeah, so I'm going to assume McLaren thought that a set of mediums on Lando is too far to take them at half distance. A bit surprised that they didn't use the cheap pit stop for Lando there. He's got to take the mediums to the end, but the mediums have got this far from the start of the race, haven't they? So a little bit surprised that they didn't grab that.
Or are they holding out for another safety car? I wonder.
Yeah, another banana skin somewhere and turn wherever. Bernie, what do you reckon about that?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of discussion on Lando Norris's car about how the medium was holding up. They thought it wasn't as robust as the hard tyre. That's what they were telling Lando all along. So So I think they've decided that this hard, having been worn down, a bit of cooling behind the safety car, is still going to be very strong. That's what they're thinking for Lando Norris. Just a very quick one on Lewis Hamilton at that pit stop. That mechanic that you see, the sort of blue tube he has, that's for the front wing adjust. And when I look at the onboard, it's like that mechanic was told very late about a front wing adjust. So he goes to step in much later in the pit stop than he normally would, tries to get the wing adjust, doesn't get it done, and then moves out, well, just about moves out of the way of the car. So I think Lewis is not carrying the balance that he would ideally have on this hard tyre. I think there was a call for a balance change on the front wing that did not happen on Lewis's car, so let's see how that affects the performance of this hard tyre.
That could be quite crucial between now and the end of the race in terms of protecting those front tyres. Charles Leclerc is about to take the lead of this race, I think, Martin. It's coming.
Yeah, that's the aerodynamic balance. We almost always actually see them when they go from soft to medium or medium to hard, for example. They'll give a little tweak of front wing up or down to help balance out the lower mechanical grip of those tyres.
This is a quite absorbing Belgian Grand Prix at the moment. Being led for this moment by Lando Norris, but Charles Leclerc is coming right at him on the Kemmel straight and is about to take the lead of the race, and does so with ease. Lando knew there was no point fighting that one whatsoever. Second race running then, Charles Leclerc is leading a Grand Prix. Kimi Antonelli is fast catching these two and lapping at about half a second a lap quicker than Leclerc. That's when Leclerc was behind Norris, though.
Unsafe release noted for Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton.
And that in a race tends to be a penalty rather than a fine. Just that's what they'll. Lewis Hamilton fans will be thinking, oh, okay, does it affect the driver? Does it affect the team?
You can't differentiate between them. You can't. If the driver sticks it in the wall in the final corner, you can't give the victory to the team. And if the car blows up in the final corner, you can't give. With his more heavily used tyres, he's done 24 laps on those. Now, of course, he's on his 25th. So, he'll need a lot of pace later on, won't he, when he puts the fresh ones on. Here we go.
And just holds off.
Yeah. And I think he left the requisite amount of space there, Lando. So making that McLaren as wide as he can. He wants to get as far into this race as he can. But now he's starting to lose heavy time. I knew Lewis Hamilton in clear air with mid 1 minute 50s as well, like Lando Norris, struggling with understeer. On that Ferrari, and that rather confirms that the mechanic who nearly got run over was diving in for a belated front wing change. And
I've just had a little look at the penalty guidelines, Martin, for an unsafe release from a pit stop in a race. 5 or a 10-second penalty or a drive-through. Doesn't mention fines. That comes in qualifying. Or in practice sessions. It'll be a driver penalty if they feel it is an unsafe release, and given that the car made contact with the mechanic,
Quite hard to defend that one, wasn't it?
If Lewis had a green light, the team shouldn't have released it, put the green light on. That's the key. There goes Kimi Antonelli to the bus stop chicane, trying to get past Lando Norris. All the while this is happening, Charles Leclerc's building just a little bit more of a gap out in front. Last lap, he was 0.8 of a second quicker than Kimi Antonelli.
Antonelli's losing that 0.8 of a second now, and look out for while he's trying to get past the very wide McLaren of Lando Norris, and Max Verstappen starting to cruise up behind him again, and Oscar Piastri still in the 1:49s too.
Yeah, they're lapping very similar lap times. Antonelli needs this, needs an overtake. The McLaren's harvesting. Norris is breezed past on that Kemmel straight. The gap, 3 seconds then between your race leader Charles Leclerc and Kimi Antonelli. At some stage, McLaren are going to have to pit Lando Norris. They'll be hoping. I would imagine to not lose too much time, and then I think put the soft compound tyre on for the ends, when, as you rightly say, Martin, he will be pretty rapid.
You reckon they'll go for a set of used softs at the end?
Why not?
Or a brand new set of mediums?
Give it a few qualifying laps. I suppose it depends as well. If we get a safety car, he'll be in right away. Hulkenberg under pressure from Gasly under pressure from Hulkenberg, who now gets to alongside the front wing, but Gasly's a bit later on the brakes, and that keeps Hulkenberg down in 12th place. Bernie Collins, to you at race control.
Yeah, just a quick one. Pick up on that conversation you're having there about Lando Norris. Is this the point that they are regretting that decision to run that second new soft in Q3 yesterday? Would they feel in a much more favourable position if the question was new or used soft at this stage with that new one in their pocket from Q3?
Yeah, that's a very fair point. You have to commit early. They wouldn't have foreseen some of the circumstances that's got Lando up into the top 3 or even leading the race, but always better to have something up your sleeve.
Especially as he went off the track using those brand new tyres, didn't he, on his second run?
Box for Lance Stroll coming to the pits. They've got a clutch problem. I would imagine he might be the third retiree from this race. George Russell on lap 1 after contact with Hamilton, who picked up a 5-second penalty. Sergio Perez with a suspension issue, he thought, and Lance Stroll with a clutch problem could be the latest to retire.
I suspect they've been able to change the front wing level on Piastri's car as well. Well, he's flying along now with a fresh set of tyres, cruising up to the back of Max Verstappen.
It's the cars either come alive or sink a little bit when you change the compound. Hamilton's got that sinking feeling, lapping in the 150s at the moment. Isaac Hadjar behind him, lapping in the 149s, and those ahead lapping quicker than Hamilton too. Verstappen's not enjoying these tyres at all. He has got another set of hard compound tyres. He's got another set of medium that are brand new as well, should he choose to use them. I'm sure he won't want to come in to the pits. If he did, it would relegate him down round about to 7th place, but it would leave him pretty racy for the end of the race. See what happens.
Top 5 covered by 7 seconds at the moment, and then they are very much dropping Lewis Hamilton now in this phase of the Grand Prix. 14.4 seconds off the lead. He's not that far away from being a pit stop behind. He really needs to somehow get into the 149s, but if his car's understeering, sliding across the track at the front end, that just hurts the tyres ever more.
Certainly does. Right, let's see what can happen again as we head into the straight line mode of the start-finish straight, and then along the Kemmel straights, Norris Verstappen, Piastri separated by 2.2 seconds as they cross the line. Now what Piastri is looking for is a really good exit out of the source and pick up a slipstream here behind not one but two cars. Not overdo it too much on the electrical deployment, the battery deployment. And use the slipstream to gain himself an advantage and to get closer to Verstappen. Verstappen had a slipstream yesterday behind his teammate Isaac Hadjar in qualifying. It was worth 17 kilometres an hour on that back stretch. He's used that slipstream and maybe a bit of battery deployment to good use here because he's got a lot closer to Lando Norris as we start to drop down the hill now through Rivage.
If it's a one-stopper for the front runners, Lando's got a lot of overtaking to do in the final stages to get back up there.
Certainly has. Kimi Antonelli's got a bit of overtaking to try and get a bit closer to get ahead of Charles Leclerc, and he's picked up 0.3 on Leclerc on this lap so far. Middle part of the lap, the Red Bull has been strong. That's why Norris can now see Max Verstappen very large in his wing. Mirrors as Colapinto gets ahead of Hulkenberg in the scrap for 12th place. And as you rightly said, Martin, that gravel that will get off the racing line eventually. It gets kind of hoovered away by the cars.
Yeah, it's not sharp enough. I mean, it's very specification, the gravel, it's not, and it's not sharp enough to puncture tyres, thankfully. What it does do is hits the driver's fingers sometimes on the steering wheel. Or indeed switch Nico Hulkenberg's Audi off completely, didn't it?
Yeah, hit the kill switch on the side of the car when Liam Lawson just flicked up a bit of gravel in Barcelona. Kimi Antonelli lost a couple of tenths to Charles Leclerc in the middle sector on this lap. It was while he was trying to lap Fernando Alonso, and he's now managed to clear him. Verstappen a lot closer. To Lando Norris on lap 29 than he was coming out of the source on lap 28 as we barrel down through Eau Rouge and make that 40-metre climb up to the top of the hill at Radion. A lot of Max Verstappen fans on those banks alongside the Kemmel Straight. They'll be cheering him on, they'll be willing him on. He's trying to respond, gets into the chicane, has responded, goes a little bit deep, maybe goes too deep. Lando Norris can try and fight this back. Verstappen closes the door on him and hangs on to third place.
Yeah, that was Max. However late you brake, Lando, I'm braking later, and I'll sort it out when I get there.
If he'd have broke any later, he might have. Ended up in the campsite, but for now
like a drift car, basically. Those tyres have had it.
That's why he is now coming in. Lap 31. The hard tyres that he's had on from the start of this race now giving up the ghost, and it's time for a pit stop. They need a quick one from the crew. and they don't get a quick one from the crew. Left-hand rear that didn't want to come off, and it doesn't want to go back on too much either. Now, we said that he was going to come out behind Isaac Hadjar, but is Lando Norris now going to come out behind Gabriel Bortoleto as well? Here comes the Audi down towards La Source. Norris has got that inside line, but he's lost out to Hadjar, and he's lost out to Bortoleto as well, and that pit stop needed to be quicker, and that troublesome left rear put pay to any chance of that.
Yeah, didn't want to come off, did it? And then I didn't want to go on. So that increases the overtaking workload Lando Norris now has if he wants a big haul of points today.
Medium tyres then for Lando Norris to the end of this race.
Yeah, it was the only decision really, wasn't it? I don't think there's any point in risking a new set of soft tyres. I just don't know why they weren't on slightly earlier, but Charles...
This first and second gear is so bad. Out of one, so bad. So hard.
Clunky old gear shift he's talking about there.
1.5 seconds as well, the gap between himself and Kimi Antonelli. The gap has come down by half from the moment that Antonelli got past Norris about 7 laps ago. Bernie Collins, to you.
Yeah, Kimi Antonelli really pushing on, like you say, Crofty, but looking a little bit further down the field. The Hadjar's pace is still really strong on that hard tyre that he's been on for so long. I was just going to check. I think something flashed up my data that said something different there. But Hadjar doing really well. And then the only other thing to point out is Lewis Hamilton. Hadjar's been pushed on because Hamilton, they're saying, might have a penalty. So he's been asked to try and close that gap to Lewis Hamilton. And then the final thing is Martin had said about Antonelli not being on the radio too much. Well, he has been on, we've just not heard it. He was told that he's losing to Leclerc through turns 10, 12 and 13, 2 tenths, and he replied saying, I can't push any more there. I've just nearly crashed. I'm not pushing more through that section.
Really interesting. You'd have thought Kimi Antonelli, based on what we've seen so far this weekend, would have had all the pace in the world to have caught Charles Leclerc by now and passed him. It is not proving that way. Backmarker was Fernando Alonso. So that helps out, I think, Gabriel Bortoleto for that moment, but he's not going to be helped out for much longer. And Lando Norris has got this pass done by the time they get to 1 second up the Kemmel Straight. Now he's trying to break. The toe, don't want to weave too much, especially when you get into the braking zone. Looked about okay.
I have expected Lando to lunge Gabriel Bortoleto into the first corner, but he decided to bide his time. Up the back straight. So next up then for Norris is Hadjar.
Along that Kemmel Straight, Kimi Antonelli retakes the lead of the Belgian Grand Prix. Was warned that Leclerc will try and squeeze him potentially into the chicane. He managed to get the overtake done before the chicane was a factor. Antonelli leads then, and 11 laps to go.
Lando Norris, new personal best out there, 149.4 compared to the leaders, late 149s, early 150. So Norris then 9.9 seconds to get, as you can see on the screen, up to Hadjar. We don't know. I think Lewis will take another penalty after the race, went in for that unsafe release, sadly. So Norris. Best chance he's got is P5 at the moment. Piastri, if he can just find an ounce more pace, it's not out of the question that Piastri could be on the podium as well.
Well, it hasn't been on the podium, Oscar Piastri, since Miami when he finished third. Was also on the podium in Japan, runner-up at Suzuka this year. Be a welcome return to the podium for him. Leclerc, Antonelli and Piastri, I think, would be yet another unique, different podium. This season, I think we'd have 10 podiums, and it would be 10 different podiums each time. I'm doing that off memory without actually writing that down, but I think I would be correct in that one.
So Leclerc's managed to stay within the 1 second zone, the overtake mode zone of Antonelli. Is this going to give him a chance to come back at him? Now it's now or never for Charles Leclerc. It's a tall order, isn't it? Charles Leclerc's car has been rubbing the ground very hard through Eau Rouge and Radillon. Hopefully his plank wear is well within legality come the end of the race, because the Ferrari's been looking quite low through there, and quite fast, it must be said.
Antonelli, Piastri and Leclerc were on the podium together in Japan. I've just looked it up while you were talking there, Martin. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to check the races this season. We're on round 10. Japan, of course, was round 3. Seems like only a couple of minutes ago. The season going past us very fast indeed, and for Kimi Antonelli, what a season it is so far. Even with the 2 failures to score points in the last 3 Grand Prix, he is still the championship leader, and went into this race knowing that he was still going to be the championship leader coming out of it, and he's going to be extending his championship lead at the checkered flag.
Charles Leclerc hasn't given up yet at all.
As his fan is absolutely delighted about. Yeah, any thoughts that Antonelli could sail off into the distance? Not happening. So it just shows you, when you start to use your battery in places that you wouldn't normally, then you're going to have to get a bit of payback at the end of the lap.
Well, it's like a double-edged sword, isn't it? Antonelli had the overtake mode. It's not something we can see, but we know about it. You can collect another half megajoule of battery power, and you keep your higher top speed for longer. And of course, now suddenly it's Leclerc who's got that service, as it were. And that is why you saw the breeze pass. Now suddenly he's back under pressure.
Seems to get a better exit, I think, out of Lassource there, Antonelli, than Leclerc did on. That scrap for sixth place.
Yeah, and he needs to, though. It looks like Norris will be with Hadjar on the penultimate lap. Apart towards the end of
Only Bottas and Alonso have been lapped, so they shouldn't really be a factor between now and the checkered flag.
happy days for Italy in Formula One at the moment, isn't it? Italian teenager leading the race, leading the World Championship. Ferrari back on form. And Charles Leclerc very much back on form. Monegasque, of course, not Italian, but he is in the Italian car.
He was asked, wasn't he, Kimi Antonelli, at the press conference on Thursday, are you the most famous... said, yeah, Charles. Championship to 50 points.
It's getting ever closer. So the thing to watch is that gap at the top left of your screen between Antonelli and Leclerc. The reference point, the measurement point for the overtake mode is very near the end of the lap, just into that chicane. And if you're within a second going in there, you'll get the overtake mode for the whole. Bernie's got news.
Yeah, I was just going to come in quickly. Hadjar's been told that they are expecting Norris to be on him with 2.
For Lando Norris to close down that gap. There's confirmation on your screen of what Bernie was saying there.
It was Hamilton catching Oscar Piastri. Hamilton still carrying that investigation, of course, to remind you. Very close now to breaking that.
as they head down the start-finish straight. Bortoletto hangs on to that 8th place ahead of the young rookie for the Racing Bulls.
And Hamilton now, you can see in the picture-in-picture there, top left, he is now within overtake mode of Oscar Piastri too. Piastri carrying that damage. We know Lewis hasn't got the front wing setting he wanted or expected, but so they look like they're going to
wing level, shall we call it in Formula One parlance. Lap 38 of 40 might just get that sinking feeling that he's outside that magic 1 second margin. The Mercedes has been better on the straights than the Ferrari. It hasn't got much to try and get back under that 1 second unless he leaves the braking really, really late, and he hasn't done that. So as they go through that detection point, this is the bit where Kimi Antonelli might just say, phew, thank heavens for that. I'm now more than a second in front of Charles Leclerc, as Leclerc loses 2 to 3 tenths a lap from that half a megajoule of energy in his pursuit. Talking of pursuits, here's the one you were talking about, Martin. Oscar Piastri's the car in front. Lewis Hamilton is the man in 5th place, and 5 tenths, half a second between them as they cross the line.
Yes, given Verstappen some breathing space up there in 3rd, hasn't it? As Norris does another new fastest lap of the race, taking a further second out of Isaac Hadjar. What's Lewis Hamilton got on the long climb to Les Combes?
I think the problem is, Ken, because Antonelli's losing time to Charles Leclerc through the high-speed section of the track, and that's where they've been trying to push him a little bit to get more out of the car, and that's where the track limit violations are coming. So everywhere from turn 9 down to 15, and they have been, like you say, warning him. So still hope for Charles Leclerc. He needs to be putting that pressure on through that middle sector, sector 2 of the track, and see if he can force some more mistakes from Kimi Antonelli.
Cracking drive from Charles Leclerc, isn't it? Antonelli too, of course, out front, but a really fighting drive. There from the man who won at Silverstone.
Ron Dennis used to say second, first of the losers.
Hamilton is under investigation post-race for unsafe release. We need to stay within 5 seconds. Hamilton under investigation post-race.
Yeah, you could still get that 4th back again. Yeah. But they weren't expected to be on terms with Mercedes this weekend. Antonelli seems pretty calm in that cockpit and calm out in front, asking the sensible questions when Bono
Yes.
Never a loser with us. Ever. Second Monaco, that's still a great achievement. Not bad at all. Pierre got him 500 career points. I dare say you'd quite like to get back on terms and beat Franco Colapinto today. Given the move that Colapinto pulled off, and it looked like a pretty decent move as well at the end of this straight to get ahead of his teammates. There's an to about 2 seconds, which is
really is going to be penultimate lap, isn't it? Yeah. When they start fighting, but Norris will soon get into that overtaking zone that we've been talking about.
Yeah, and gain that 2 or 3 tenths of a second to use for his advantage. We're on board with Liam Lawson, and he's getting a bird's eye view at the moment of the Alpine scrap for 10th place. Thinking, right, you just fight away, guys. Cost us.
He did a 49.4. Now he's done a was right on the edge, wasn't he? Coming out you were looking at some stuff down there, Crofty. Antonelli was really pushing like crazy coming down the hill there. And he needs to be careful of track limits.
You can easily have an incident that costs you a second and a half here, and then suddenly your opponent. Just another 4.3 miles. And he gets his first victory at Spa-Francorchamps as a Formula One driver under his belt. Lando Norris would dearly love to get another 10th of a second on Isaac Hadjar. Here it comes into that detection zone. And has he got within that 1 second margin through that detection zone to try and get overtake on the last lap to help him get past Isaac Hadjar? I'm not sure he did, to be honest.
Not according to that graphic. So Hadjar's done a really good job to at least keep himself very much in play.
Leclerc behind him. This has been a very fine day for the young Italian. For his teammate George Russell, it is the double disappointment of a first lap exit and then seeing his teammate and championship rival go on to win the race. That gap that was 25 points at the start of this race will grow to 50 points between Russell and Antonelli.